the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.
This is ResiWeek, the weekly look at the residential market for the AV industry. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us this week, my new good friend. His name is Jeremy Glowacki from Residential Systems. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Also with us, an old friend just the AV network in general. Jason, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Tim. How are you?
Doing well. Jason has, we've had him on before. He's spent most of his time in residential. He went from LA to Denver about 6-9 months ago.
Yeah, roughly. I think about 7 months ago. And
7 months ago.
Really enjoying it. Beautiful day here in Denver, and really it's been a great transition.
And he also does a podcast with another good friend of ours, Big Nate, called AV Shop Talk. So check that out too. And also, last but not least, our buddy from Central Georgia, Stephen Bronner. How are you, sir?
I'm doing outstanding, my friend. It's good to be back.
All right. So let's kick this off real quick. Our friend at Strategy, Mr. Ted Green, he and Residential Systems probably have some of the more comprehensive stuff on Sharp. But according to Ted, this was posted March 30th, so roughly last Thursday. They said that apparently by Saturday, Sharp will officially be a part of the Foxconn group. Now, this is something that's been going on for, good Lord, a month now, month and a half. And the deal is roughly $5.3 billion. Terry Gao is the head of Foxconn, also known as Hanhai Precision. This is the group that's going in and purchasing Sharp. A whole lot of things are going on here. A lot of geopolitical stuff in Japan that I'm not even going to get into. Not smart enough. Just going to be honest here. But Jason, we're going to start with you on this. From a business standpoint, a residential market standpoint, and kind of an overall display manufacturer standpoint, what does this do to Sharp's position in the market, plus, overarching, looking at some of the technologies that they have been working on the last few years?
Yeah, well, I'm a lot more comfortable now that I know that we're avoiding geopolitics, so thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely.
This story has been one I've actually gotten most of my updates from you guys. You've been doing a great job of covering this story. I haven't been very intimately acquainted with it. Sharp is not a brand that I've worked a lot with. I know when their displays first came out, the Aquas line back I think around the mid-2000s or so, they were really a pretty prominent player in flat panels. And since then, I feel like they've just kind of dropped off a little bit, and I don't know if that's just been my limited experience working with them, but I've just heard less and less, and I've had very few clients over the years who have come to me specifically asking about Sharp. And so I feel like the Samsungs and the Sonys of the world have really been more prominent players in the high-end display space in my experience. As I was reading the story, it really struck me as a play more focused at smartphones. A lot of the coverage was about how Sharp is angling to get higher up the value chain with iPhone manufacturing, and particularly with OLED displays, and so I know that was a big aspect of the story. Hopefully it'll help them in the display side as well. I wouldn't mind seeing another high-end display maker out there, but currently we've been really focused on Sony and Samsung to a little bit of a lesser extent.
All right, Stephen, same kind of question to you, and Jeremy will end up with same sort of question. What does this do for Sharp and your business?
Actually, in my company, we avoid Sharp panels. The truth is that they have become their picture quality is not great. Sharp doesn't make their money in our industry. Sharp is an OEM supplier for several major manufacturers. So when you see a panel from Best Buy or something like that, there's a good chance that that's Sharp glass in that panel. They make their money just like Universal Remote makes their money off of OEM remotes for every cable box, DirecTV, all that. Sharp makes their money the same way. So I feel like, they tried to step into the high-end realm whenever they joined with Pioneer to do the Elite panels, and then that kind of crashed and burned. It took a total of about 2 weeks for that to fail. So now we're looking at Sharp as a honestly, I don't know if this merger will do anything for our industry, but I think what it will do is it will further commoditize flat panel production, which will bring the price down. However, when the price comes down so low, you start losing quality. So I think that as far as an overall effect on our industry, it will make it tougher to sell a more quality TV, because your client's going to look just like with the Vizio line, and they're going to say, oh, I can get a 65-inch Vizio 4K for $12 and a pack of bubble gum. What are we going to do? Why are you trying to sell me a Sony for $3,000? And it makes it more difficult. So the more you commoditize our industry and the more these large companies join up, that's where it's going to hurt. As far as integrators using Sharp TVs, I don't know a single integrator that sells Sharp TVs. They don't control well. They have terrible picture quality. When they were selling the 70s, 80s, 90s, 185,000-inch TVs, for dirt cheap, people were asking for them because they were huge. But our job as an integrator is to point our client to a better product. Now, at the end of the day, if they want chocolate, give them chocolate. But you point your client towards a better product, and that means that most integrators are avoiding those TVs.
See, and that's interesting. Back when I was programming, I did a number of jobs, commercial jobs, where in some of the boardrooms we would do the Aquos line, and they weren't horrible to program. I can't speak to the residential line because I never tried to program them. So, Jeremy, we're going to kick this with you. Jason mentioned smartphone possibility. Stephen mentioned the fact that they OEM an awful lot of stuff. Are we possibly looking at maybe the beginning of the end of Sharp as a brand, maybe, or as an actual and we can go out and purchase, and more the fact that Foxconn is looking at this as a manufacturing arm? Because let's be honest, that's what Foxconn does. They're manufacturing, right? They don't. I shouldn't say they don't have any experience with marketing. I'm certain that they do, but Foxconn is known for making the iPhone. That's where they that's where at least the average American first heard their name. So now they're picking up this company that, Jason's right, they've done a lot of work in OLED. There's been a lot of talk about the fact that the next generation of not only iPhones but also other smartphones are moving towards OLED. Is that possibly what they're looking at? And if so, what do they do with this probably percentage-wise small part of their business?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly how I read this whole thing, was that brand of Sharp is not coming back with this purchase. I mean, it's not where they're going with this, and there's got to be technology behind the scenes that they're trying to acquire here. And I mean, I don't see the 55-inch iPhone coming out anytime soon, but I did have an inkling of thought of the Apple television, the big debate.
Thank you. I love that. Yes, thank you.
I mean, I don't know if that's ever going to see the light of day. That ship might have sailed, but it did cross my mind, I have to say, when I read this. But yeah, I was there with the Aquas branding back at CES, like this massive booth, and then they introduced this, it was this fourth color, concept that I frankly thought looked terrible. The yellow added to the RGB just made no sense to me. It was like, yeah, you made an old-timey looking TV now. It's like sepia tone television. Yep. I always have to play my politics very close to the vest when I'm dealing with manufacturers, because we are an advertising-supported publication. But at the time, I just had to bite my tongue. Like, this is the first time I've looked at video that just did not look right, and I don't get what they're trying to achieve here. That was a long time ago, and then the brand just sort of faded away from the major push at shows like CES. But I do think that it's probably going to continue to fade, and that there is something behind the scenes that I'm not privy to, obviously, but that they're working on something with technology here. And who knows if it has anything to do with Apple, but they're a major customer for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had forgotten about that whole fourth color yellow thing, honestly.
It was really
how could you forget?
Well, that's a good point. How could you forget? But yeah, it was It was the, yeah, we have 4 colors. That's awesome, guys. Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Well, it will inform the rainbow of your decision.
Of your decision.
Right.
We'll inform the creators of TV of your decision. Thanks for playing. So, all right. Let's go here. Up next is a story about Global Cache, actually from Residential Systems. They've entered into a strategic partnership with Wyrestorm. Now, if you're not familiar with Global Cache, and I honestly wasn't until about a year ago, they make IP, Wi-Fi, network-based connectivity products. Basically, and I'm going to simplify this here, and Steven's going to rake me over the coals. They make stuff that you can take non-networked devices and put them on the network. Is that simple enough, Steven?
That's actually great. Yeah.
Okay, good. I'll continue then. So an example is you have a Blu-ray player, and let's say it's a Blu-ray, I don't know, it's a Sony Blu-ray player, and it doesn't have a network jack on it. You can't get it on the network. Then you take this Global Cache device that takes network into IR, and so it has a network port. Then you can get other networked control systems to talk to said Blu-ray. Now, I said IR for a reason. It's still only one way, right? It's still only IR, so you're only sending it one way. But they also have 232 devices and some other things. So, Stephen, first and foremost, how significant is this for Wyrestorm or even for Global Cache for this partnership?
I love it. Seriously, this is awesome. So, Global Cache is for lack of a better way to put it, it's kind of the dark horse in our industry. People know it's out there, and they are doing things that these control companies want to do so bad, and they're able to do it and do it well, and everybody loves the stuff. So now they've teamed up with another company with brand recognition, Wyrestorm. And so now you've got Global Cache teamed up with Wyrestorm. It can only go up from there. As long as the quality stays there in the product, like they haven't joined manufacturing. This is just a partnership to incorporate their products with the Wyrestorm products and vice versa. But Global Cache has been, if you don't have Global Cache in your tool belt for something that you use, you get on a project, hey, I need to control this device, nobody pulled a control cable to it. Okay, here's a Wi-Fi device. You stick it right here. Now you have complete control over it. No wires pulled, no sheetrock cut. And it works. That's the thing about Global Cache. It just works. Now, Wyrestorm has really stepped up their game in the last year and a half to 2 years. Many of us remember when it first came out, they had problems, and they went through and they completely redid their manufacturing. I have dealt with them one-on-one. Their customer service is incredible. So you've got this company that is willing to do anything. I speak to Wyrestorm customer service, and they're really trying to pull me. I use another switching company, and it's not a big secret, but I won't say it here. But to give some good things for Wyrestorm, whenever they were trying to get me to switch over, I spoke directly to their head of engineering, directly to their head of sales, directly to these people, and they were attentive. They weren't just, oh, here's another call. They were, hey, we'll send you a product to demo the product, put it in, beat it up, see what you can do. So it is, to see these two companies teaming up, it's almost, I hate to be cheesy, but it's like the power. Here you have two B-list actors that are getting married, and you have two B-list players that are getting married, and all of a sudden you're going to have an A-plus list blockbuster product. So hopefully everything will work out well. I think both of these companies have a huge amount of promise. So let's see where it goes.
That actually is actually not a bad example, because both Wyrestorm and Global Cache kind of fly under the radar, right? You know about them. If you know about them, you know about them, and you use them. And if you don't, the first time somebody mentions them, it's like, why didn't I know about this company that's been around for X number of years? So
right. And Global Cache is such a problem solver. Every single integrator out there has been in a situation where they look at a 8-piece crown mold and a faux finished wall, and they're sitting there with a brand new product, like, how am I going to control this? And now you're stuck shooting direct IR out of your remote control instead of putting it on a system so that it's not directional. Global Cache is such an amazing product line. So I'm not trying to sound like a fanboy, which I do, but the thing is that as an integrator, we all have those products that we look at and go, if it wasn't for this product, things would be a lot more difficult. So when I look at Global Cache, that is how I think of them. And like you said, they kind of fly under the radar, but you won't find a company that has used them that stopped using them.
Wow. Okay. That's good to know. I found out about them actually from two friends of mine. One is Utelegy, who a lot of Utelegy iterations, and that's more on the education and the commercial side. A lot of installations with Utelegy will use Global Cache, and then our buddy Patrick, who's a programmer over in Germany, his product AV GUI, he uses a lot of Global Cache to talk to things over the network. So, Mr. Glowacki, let's talk with you about this. What does this do for like Steven said, two B movie actors, two companies that kind of fly under the radar coming together like this?
Yeah, I'm the same way as you. These companies really haven't had a big marketing push for media. To me, I get press releases from both of them, but I don't know them well. But I have begun hearing great, comments from people through the industry about them. It's like they're kind of this little rising star, talking about Global Cache particularly. But then this arrangement here between them and Wyrestorm really kind of just is an added credibility sort of factor, and I believe it's just going to continue from here. They're starting to kind of catch a wave, and I'm going to pay them a lot more attention than I have been, and I'm sure that they're going to start reaching out to me more as a result of their partnerships as well. And I do just hear problem solver that keeps coming up time after time from integrators. So exactly what Stephen was saying.
Yeah, that's one thing is you make a good point. Two companies coming together. That's the wonderful thing about partnerships is you can help each other out in areas that you're kind of weak in. So, all right, Mr. Griffin, last word on this. What do we think about Wyrestorm and Global Cache?
I think it makes a ton of sense, and particularly for Wyrestorm. Global Cache is really the only option when you want to get into doing control and you don't want to build your own hardware to control it. That's really what Global Cache. It's a big part of their business model, and if you read their about page, they really emphasize their focus on an open architecture and the ability to integrate with really any control system out there. So I think for Wyrestorm, it was a no-brainer. I think Global Cache, I would agree with everything everyone else has said, definitely a problem solver. I've been in numerous projects where their particular products were used to solve a very particular need. I do have to wonder, if there are conversations happening at Global Cache at the highest levels about what the 5 to 10 year outlook looks like, because if you think about what Global Cache is really doing, and Tim, you surmised this at the very beginning, is that they're adding network connectivity to devices that don't already have it. But as these devices continue to evolve, more and more of them already do have it. And so I just wonder, 10 years from now, what does Global Cache look like? Are they still around when everything's already on the network by default? And I do have to wonder about that. That's a very long-term sort of philosophical conversation, right? Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, right now, they're a very unique company. They're very uniquely positioned to solve a lot of problems that we as integrators come across, that there's really nobody else out there who does what they do. And I would agree, they do it very well. So I think that this partnership makes a lot of sense for both companies.
Hey, Tim.
Yes, sir.
That just brought to mind exactly what I observed at CEDIA maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, where all of a sudden the show floor seemed to be all of these gadget problem solver type products. And you more recently have seen some of the bigger brands coming back to the show floor there. So it's become more of an entertainment technology show again, a hybrid of the two. But there for a bit, it just seemed like everyone was launching a brand to solve some little behind-the-scenes challenge that integrators were facing, and some were former integrators doing that. But I'm not exactly sure what the background of the Global Cache team is. But it does make you wonder. It's definitely a short-term need, but long-term, will they sort of have to evolve into something different? Maybe they'll find another problem to solve.
So here's one of the areas in Resi I can do. I do know something about. Actually had dinner with Robin Ford and the guys that started Global Cache like 6 months ago. They are former IT folks. They came from Silicon Valley. They made their money doing good Lord networking and infrastructure things back in the 80s and the 90s. They were building a house, and they didn't like any of the control options that they had, and so they got a bunch of their engineers and themselves together and said, we can do this better, and there's Global Cache. It was a personal need that they somehow fixed, and they said we might have a market for this. Honestly, that's the story.
So the good thing, Tim, is, and I watch almost all the broadcasts, the AV Week and the ResiWeek stuff, and I notice a common theme, and that is that you are a big advocate for open source,
Absolutely.
Open source programming, open source control, and the good thing is this product. It's interesting to me that you just learned about it a year ago, because this product is actually exactly what you're constantly talking about. It's completely open source. They work with everybody. They play in everybody's sandbox, and that's another positive. Is unlike a lot of these companies that make it and they say, oh, this works with this company and this company, but not this company. Global Cache doesn't care. And that is. So I always notice a theme whenever you're talking about control of open source, and it's neat to me that we're now talking about a company that is almost completely open source. And we lost Jeremy.
No, it's all right. He'll be back. He'll be back.
Well, and that's really, Tim, if I can add one more thing. I mean, I think Global Cache, I talk about long term, and I question if they're going to have to evolve into something else. I think in the more short to mid-term, they've got a very promising looking outlook, because what we've seen so much of in the smart home over the last couple of years is all of these companies entering with various point solutions that we talk about all the time, things like smart light bulbs and smart thermostats. Eventually these companies are going to have to come to the realization that one of the primary things consumers want control of in their home is the media room. And a lot of these startups and smaller companies aren't going to want to devote the resources to building a control database and building hardware that can do IR. And that's where a company like Global Cache will be a perfect strategic partner, I think, for a lot of these other startups that maybe we don't even know exist yet. And so I think it's a very interesting business model, and I think in the short term, they do bring a ton of value. Again, my question is just 10 years from now, when everything is on the network by default, where does a company like Global Cache fit into that picture?
Yeah, that's a good question, and Steven's right. I've made no hiding of the fact that I have come. My background in programming has come through the Crestron pipeline, and I also do Extron as well. But both of those, and when Extron's a little unique in the fact that they've just started with their Python, which is a little bit more open source. I love open standards. I love C++. I love Java and all of those. The idea that you can take one device, and if you've got a control system and you have somebody else's device, whether that's a control processor or it's a touch panel, what have you, and having the two be able to talk together. That comes from my background as in education. When I was a tech manager, we had several different classrooms, right? Several different manufacturers in each one. And settling on a standard is sometimes difficult and sometimes problematic in the education world, because one year you're going to have $100,000 to spend, and the next year you're going to have $2. That's it.
Right.
$2, not $2,000. $2. And so, and that's where that comes from. And I believe in the agnosticism and being able to tie all that together. So that's where that comes from. Steven's right. All right, let's talk about wireless audio for a second, and then I'll let you guys get out of here for a Monday. So we got Bluetooth, we got AirPlay, we got Sonos. This comes from us from CNET. Play-Fi, Chromecast. I'm going to throw in Roku, as well as doing. I almost said Pandora, but not really, because Pandora requires somebody else's devices. So we've got all these wireless playing AirPlay, good Lord, wireless air playing systems. Jeremy, you've seen most of these, at least, either in working or on the show floor. What is your sense? Is there a huge difference between these technologies, or is it pretty much whatever the customer wants when it comes down to quality and ease of use?
Well, I think a lot of this story revolves around the topic of compression, and I honestly don't think that a lot of end users are going to notice compression like some of us might, and I do hear it sometimes, but I've kind of gotten to the point where you're used to it, and your ears are not seeking something better like they should. But I mean, right now I have 12 Bluetooth device, possibilities on my iPhone. I've got so many Bluetooth devices now, wireless speakers that I've gotten, handed to me, wireless headphones, different things to try out, that's just become sort of my new sort of standard, unfortunately, in a lot of ways, but it's also very convenient at times. I think that if you have a closed loop sort of system, like, there are limits on, obviously, Play-Fi, there's limits on Sonos. You're going to build a complete ecosystem of that brand. Sonos is exceptionally easy. I mean, they're taking the industry over, basically, because of the simplicity and the marketing. And I can't say that after fighting them for so long that there are that many complaints about the capabilities there. I think there are a lot of options, and it's just a matter of where you start. You start with the Apple device, or are you willing to buy everything within one brand, or do you want things to be flexible?
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, we'll come to you on this. Jeremy mentions the idea of compression. Back when the MP3 was first put together, and it started gaining traction late 90s, early 2000s. Obviously, 2001 we had the introduction of the iPod. Audiophiles were bemoaning and decrying the lack of fidelity and the lack of dynamic range. And now we have an entire generation, and I'm as guilty as anybody else. Most of my content is done through streaming, whether that's Spotify or Amazon music player, what have you, or iTunes as well. Are we to that point where it's good enough, and so it just matters on what your preferred interface is?
I think we are, personally, and I don't relish in that fact. I just think that the reality of it is, and I speak from direct experience as somebody who's out there talking to clients all day, every day, and potential clients as well, is that the audio quality is taking a backseat to the accessibility of various types of content. So depending on what you listen to, if you're a Pandora user, Spotify user, iTunes, Apple Music, there's all these different services out there. And it really, the best fit for the person is going to depend primarily on where their music lives and what they like to use, and then the ease of use. And I think one of the things I noticed about this article that I thought was interesting, that it was really not even mentioned, is the Amazon Echo. And that's a platform that I know a lot of people are using for music very heavily because of the convenience of the voice control. And I even know one gentleman who I won't name here, but says he has a Sonos Play 5, which is a beautiful sounding speaker, sits right next to his Amazon Echo on the kitchen counter, and he says 90% of the time he uses the Amazon Echo because he can just say, "Hey, Alexa, turn on some music." And so the convenience factor is really trumping everything. And I think that's something that really wasn't touched on in this article, and to me is more important. I think there are very few people out there who can hear the difference in compression, and even fewer who actually care. And so I think it really comes down to the ease of use. I think Bluetooth is great for particular applications, but struggles with things like range and with multiple users. If you want to trade control of that speaker back and forth from multiple smartphones, for instance. Yep. And so there's drawbacks to each one. I do think that probably Sonos is still the best in class. We've been hearing a little bit about some troubles going on with that company and some shifts that they're making recently. But I think overall, when you look at the user experience and the access to a wide variety of content, I still think that Sonos is the one to beat.
All right, Stephen, you're going to have the last word on this, buddy. Wireless streaming music or just music compressed and all this jazz. Is there a best in class as CNET tries to put together, or is it just pretty much what you prefer?
Sorry, somebody's trying to open the door behind me. Okay.
Here's the thing. Hang on. I love talking to residential guys and gals because 90% of the time they're on site. So.
Yeah, exactly. So here's my thing, and I think that the Bluetooth for quality is probably going to be your best bet. I know that Play-Fi is really good. Sonos is a convenient thing. That's Sonos, AirPlay. Of course, you have Apple lossless and things like that. But the truth is that once you send it over AirPlay, you lose a little bit of that. But I will say that with the small niche of clients that we have that want sound quality, there's a solution for that. There are nice DACs that you can put on that have great circuitry in them. I actually backed one on Kickstarter, Blueme, that's Boume, and it's phenomenal. I got it in, I tested it, I love it. You're talking to a guy that has a set of monitor Silver 8s and a turntable and all these things, and I love the sound quality, and I see the benefit, though, because on that same system I have this DAC that processes the sound. Of course, it's not going to give you a complete recovery, but you don't hear it as much. But the problem we run into is when the client says, I want to stream my music, but I also want a set of Tritons, or I also want a set of DefTech Super Towers or Mythos, or, then you tell the client, well, hold on just a second, because if you get that $1,000, $1,200 set of headphones, if you get that $4,000 pair of speakers, if you get any of these things, what's going to happen is you're going to hear this compression in those speakers. You're going to hear it through that amplification. You're going to hear these things, so you have to sell the services right for your client. Bluetooth works great for most people as long as they're in the room, but one thing about Sonos is they work no matter where you are as long as you're on the network. Denon Hios is one that I like a little more than the Sonos, purely because with Denon Hios, if you leave the network, your music continues playing. Instead of the music living on your smart device, the music actually lives on the devices on the network, and from there you can, so if I'm listening to music and the wife says, hey, run to the store and grab me some hamburger buns or whatever, and I leave with my phone, the music doesn't stop playing. So
Gotcha.
there are many solutions out there, but I think that, because you have so many different platforms and so many different possibilities, you just have to match the right platform to your client. And so some clients are Sonos clients. That's a retail product. They've done really, really well. Like Jeremy said, they've been a monster in the industry. They are starting to lose some of that edge because of innovation. They just stopped innovating. They came out with a phenomenal product. They came in, they were the 300-pound gorilla. Nobody could touch them, and then they decided, oh, we're the best, and they stopped innovating. The problem with that is that when you stop innovating, just because you add Deezer or just because you add some new streaming service, that's not an innovation. So they stopped innovating, and other people have come in, and they've started doing it, and they do it a little better. Yamaha Music Cast. Companies like that are doing things, Jeremy, you said you have, 10 Bluetooth devices. Well, with Yamaha Music Cast, you can talk through the Yamaha, and it plays backwards through your Bluetooth to your existing Bluetooth speakers. So you don't have to have Yamaha speakers to play on a Yamaha Music Cast system. You can have that little stick-on speaker that you put in the shower and you sing to that just sticks to the wall. The Yamaha will talk to that. That's innovation. So, there's two actual sides to this. There's the sound quality side and the solution for the client, and then there's who's innovating. So I think that is the direction I would go is you choose the best for your client. Like you said, some people can't hear the difference. Some people have been listening to MP3s on a set of, $15 headphones from the local, 7-Eleven, and they jam out and they love it. But if you get guys out there and they buy even a nice set of Beats headphones, though our industry doesn't care for them because we don't make any money on them, they're a good set of headphones if you get their high-end headphones. If you get a set of Sennheisers and you put MP3s on them, they're going to sound like garbage. So that is, it's not a one-stop shop. There is no best solution.
All right, I just have to say this: Beats are not good headphones. I don't care which brand, which level you get. I have a pair of, and I did not pay for these. I won them in a contest. I have a pair of Momentums, Sennheiser Momentums, and I listen to MP3. I listen to my audiobooks, and it's beautiful because they have a charging and they're noise canceling. So when I'm on a plane, I turn them on, I listen to my music, and I'm good. No.
Well, I think if you took the Beats and you compared them to other headphones in their price range.
In their price range, yes, absolutely. In their price range.
Right,
yes.
And that's what I try to be apples to apples, because you can't take a set of Beats promoted by a rapper and compare that to Sennheisers. Sennheisers are kind of the industry standard. Everybody who builds a set of headphones, they always say, well, do they sound as good as Sennheisers?
Yeah.
It's like building a sports car. Is it as fast as a Ferrari? So I would say that you're right. For us, Beats is not that. Those are not great headphones, but for the average consumer, for their price point, they're okay.
Okay. Yes.
I concede your point, sir.
Yes. All right. No, and you make a good point too, because the Sennheiser retail is like $500. So, again, didn't pay for them. Won them in a contest. So, I think Gizmodo. I think the week after I won them, Gizmodo did a piece, and it was the best wireless headphones, and Sennheiser was at the top. But their first caveat was, these suckers cost $500. Don't unless you've got it, don't spend it. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna let you get back to work. Mr. Griffin, thank you so much, sir. Jason Griffin.
Thanks for having me, Tim. I really enjoyed the conversation and appreciate you inviting me on.
Absolutely, anytime. How do people find you?
Yeah, so I think probably the best way, actually, you mentioned some of my podcasting efforts, and actually the one I'm focusing mostly on these days is the Home Tech podcast, and that's at hometech.fm. I've actually kind of backed away from the AV Shop Talk project a little bit. Thankfully, Nate is carrying the flag there, and that's another great show that I am proud to say I did have a hand in, and that's at avshoptalk.com. But yeah, moving forward, I'm pretty involved in the Resi side exclusively, and really focusing my efforts over at hometech.fm.
All right, very good. Mr. Stephen Bronner, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good to be back again. If someone wants to find me, it's ProAudio_GA on Twitter, ProAudioGeorgia.com. Give me a call anytime. I love to talk to other integrators, manufacturers. As you can tell, I try to dig into all the little details in the industry. So anytime somebody wants to chat, give me a buzz.
All right, very good. And last but not least, Mr. Jimmy Glowacki. Thank you, sir, from Residential Systems. How do people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Resi Editor and on residentialsystems.com. Happy to take any ideas, suggestions, anything that's going on in the industry that I'm not privy to. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Jeremy's got a lot of really great writers as well, folks who do this, people like Todd Puma and Heather Sidorowicz, both of which we've had on several times. So my name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me on Twitter, but go by the website if you would, please, avnation.tv. avnation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. This is our residential show. We have a companion to it, if you will, called AV Week. It's the one that covers the commercial market. So if you're interested in that happens on Fridays, usually posts on Mondays. So there's that. We have a brand new ed tech coming down the line. It's where we focus on the education market. We have ones on marketing, social media, live staging and events, all sorts of different aspects of the AV industry. So avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been ResiWeek.